What happens when a sovereign citizen gives a lawyer a fake check? I've dealt with a handful of self-proclaimed sovereign citizen types in my career, and every time it's the same routine. Long documents stuffed with Latin, strange seals, and the belief that paperwork is basically sorcery. Say the right string of ancient words and suddenly, no law applies to you. Judges can't stand them. Lawyers can't stand them. They turn a simple issue into a circus. Years ago, I took on a case for a close friend. Let's call him Mark. It was a simple family estate dispute involving Mark's brother, Evan, who had taken it upon himself to drain funds from their elderly father's accounts before the estate process even began. In Canada, adding yourself as joint owner on a parent's account solely to access money is heavily frowned upon. But Evan considered himself a free person of the land, and in his mind, that meant finders keepers applied to bank accounts too. I sent Evan a formal demand letter. His response? Classic sov-sit theatrics. He mailed us a payment in the form of what looked like a check, but absolutely wasn't. It was printed off some corner of the internet, drawn on a bank that didn't exist, and covered in tiny text about common law rights and maritime claims. Pure fantasy. Can I cash this? Mark asked when I showed it to him. You can try, I said, but tell the bank ahead of time so they don't think you're up to something. So he did. And of course, the check bounced immediately and dramatically. That one moment ended up being the single biggest mistake Evan could have made. We filed a straightforward lawsuit demanding the return of the estate funds. It was only a few pages long. We served him at the house he now owned outright, funded by the same money he'd taken. He had 30 days to respond. On day 30, right on cue, we got his defense. Pages of sovereign citizen buzzwords, irrelevant Latin, and claims about jurisdiction that had nothing to do with reality. I filed for summary judgment the next morning. That's when Evan shifted into full sov-sit mode. He sent long, rambling emails, letters stuffed with pseudo-legal jargon, and voicemails declaring that he did not consent to the proceedings. He even came to my office without an appointment, insisting on seeing me, pacing around the lobby, and making heated comments. It reached a point where law enforcement told him not to return unless he wanted additional problems. By the time the hearing came, everyone was done with the drama. In court, I presented the simple facts. Evan rose and immediately launched into a speech about authority, natural personhood, and other rehearsed lines from whatever forum he lived on. The judge let him go for about 10 seconds before cutting him off. Judgment granted, quick and clean. Evan had a full meltdown on the way out and promptly filed an appeal. I wasn't worried, not because the appeal had no merit, although it didn't, but because of the second case. When Evan sent that bogus check, he unknowingly handed us an airtight claim. Here, if someone gives you a check and it doesn't clear, you can sue based solely on that. You don't need to prove intent or damages. Just a check was given. It bounced. End of story. So we filed a second lawsuit the same day as the estate case. Here's where the comedy kicked in. The two lawsuits looked almost identical on the surface. Same plaintiff, same defendant, nearly the same case number, just a final digit different. When we served him, he must have thought the second packet was a duplicate. He defended only the estate case and completely ignored the bounced check case. 30 days later, default judgment. Easy. A few months passed. Evan reached out, sounding grand and generous, saying that even though he was certain he'd win his appeal, he was willing to bless his brother with a partial payment, a tiny fraction of the judgment. That's when I told him, we didn't sue you once. We sued you twice, and we already have judgment on the second one. Your house is tied up under both writs, so if your appeal doesn't go your way, you're literally gambling your home. Watching the realization land was unforgettable. After the raised voice, the pacing, and the dramatic declarations, he came back with a much different attitude. We settled, which really meant he paid every dollar he took, every dollar of legal fees, plus an additional amount for the unnecessary trouble he caused. Months later, unbelievably, he showed up at Mark's house for Christmas dinner. There he was, chatting politely and passing the mashed potatoes like none of it had ever happened. Families are strange.